Welcome back, everybody, to the Rebel Nutritionist podcast. Today, I am super excited to be interviewing Dr. Setare Taabodi, who is a board certified family nurse practitioner and a natural medicine health consultant. After suffering from POTS, digestive issues, and multiple autoimmune conditions, she was able to heal herself naturally with nutrition and herbal medicine. She now helps people all around the world reclaim their health and reverse chronic health conditions. Welcome, Dr. Setare. We should just say Setare, however you want.
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
This is great. So super excited to have you. I am really looking forward to this conversation because I think, hearing your story, understanding your entree, if you will, into the medical medium world and the journey is something our listeners, I think, will really appreciate and have been asking for. So have at it. Let's start with, what has your journey been? And how did you get here? What led you here and what you're up to now?
Yeah, that's a mouthful, but yeah, it's been a really long journey. My journey has been very messy, but basically, growing up, I always knew that I wanted to work in health or medicine, and I just felt very intuitively that I wanted to be a nurse. And I just felt like I love health and medicine, and I love people, and it's just kind of like the perfect balance for me. So I went to college, got my bachelor's in nursing, and then within that first year of me becoming a nurse, I was working in the trauma ICU. It was my dream job. I got to go to work every day and save lives. And then I actually ended up getting food poisoning from the hospital cafeteria, and that ended up triggering a host of autoimmune diseases. And it started with a lot of like mystery symptoms, like things that I had never heard of. I was just doing all this research and like, all my textbooks, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on with me. But I had developed pretty severe digestive issues. I was always bloated. I had developed food sensitivities in what felt like overnight. Um, I was chronically fatigued. I had numbness, tingling, vertigo, hot flashes. I had eczema pop up. And I was dizzy. I'd feel lightheaded all the time. I just felt so weak. And eventually got to the point where I became bedbound. And, I would go to the doctors, try to get, answers, try to get some help. And they really didn't know what to do with me. My lab work was coming back normal. And it was a really, really scary time for me. And it wasn't until I became bedbound that they really started to take my concerns seriously. And then we started to do more intensive diagnostic workups. And, I had MRIs to rule out multiple sclerosis. I had endoscopies, colonoscopies, CT scans, stool tests,
Mm.
everything. And everything pretty much came back inconclusive. I maybe had a little bit of anemia, maybe some like vitamin deficiencies, but it wasn't anything to say that like, this is what you have and this is what we're going to do about it. And I felt really, really lost. And a family friend of mine at the time had recommended that I go see like a homeopathic or holistic doctor. And I was very resistant to it. So I was just like, what's this hippie going to do for me? It's just like, cause I just, my training was in conventional medicine,
Yep.
very
Oh,
similar to
yeah.
yours,
Yep. Yep.
so I wasn't really open, but I was also 23 years old and bedbound and doctors couldn't do anything for me. So I reluctantly went, and it really opened my eyes to this whole world of alternative medicine. And they had me change my diet, and I was put on a lot of herbs, supplements, probiotics, things like that. And he really kind of dug deeper into a lot of my symptoms, and I ended up coming out with a Hashimoto's diagnosis. I ended up being diagnosed with something called POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I had adrenal insufficiency or adrenal fatigue. I had so many things going on. SIBO. I can't even remember all the list of all the things I had going on. Um, but, I ended up implementing some of those things, and I was able to get a little bit better, maybe like 50% better. I was finally able to go back to work and function a little bit and things like that. But I still didn't really feel great. And after that, I'm trying different things. I'm trying traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture. I'm trying functional medicine, and I'm spending thousands of dollars going to all these practitioners, spending money on all these functional medicine labs, taking thousands of dollars worth of herbs and supplements, and it really wasn't moving the needle for me. And I struggled for about 6 years just doing that. And it was a really like People look back at their 20s and see you're supposed to make the best time of your life. My 20s were like the worst time of my life. I was so sick. I was just in survival mode. And I was trying to live as normal as I possibly could, but I was so sick, and I really wasn't willing to accept that that was going to be the way that I lived my life. So then in 2018, I moved back to my hometown, and I was starting graduate school, and my full body broke out into hives, and I was so frustrated because I was eating a really clean paleo diet at the time. I was doing all the right things, being really strict on my protocol, but I was in this horrible flare of symptoms, and I didn't really know what was happening. And I went online and I desperately searched for like natural remedies for hives. And I was doing all the things, but then I came across this blog post, and this person was talking about how they use celery juice for their hives, and I was like, I'll do anything at this point. Like
Right.
I'll juice some celery. And then within 3 days, my hives were gone. And I just remember like really being really blown away about by my outcome. And I looked back at the blog post, and I was trying to like read more, like, where did this information come from? What's the source? And it had referenced medical medium. And it was so funny to me because over the 6 years that I had been sick, people kept like kind of bringing up, oh, you should read the medical medium books. But then I like kind of learned about like what it was, and I just wasn't really quite open to it. And it was just so funny to me that like, 6 years later, I'm like being introduced to it. So it's like, okay, my guides, my angels, the universe
Right.
is telling me that I need to look into this information. And I purchased all of the books, and I just remember reading the first book and just like sobbing. So it was like the first time I had answers. It discussed the root cause of everything that had been going on with my body. Because that's the thing, especially when it comes to like different alternative understandings of what causes illness and like
Right.
functional medicine. There's so many different theories, like, oh, it's parasites, oh, it's your microbiome, oh, it's the carbs, or it's the sugar, or it's yeast or candida. There's so many different theories, and I'd been doing all the things to supposedly get rid of those things, but it wasn't working for me. So when I read that book, it was I finally had answers, and everything really made sense. And I started implementing the information, and within 6 months, I was off of my medications. I got
Wow.
off my steroids, I got off of my thyroid medications, and I felt amazing. And it was really interesting because during that time, I was uh, in nurse practitioner school, and like here I am, like learning how to like prescribe medications and like order diagnostics, and then like while I'm like learning this stuff, I'm like also learning how to heal my body naturally. So it was like this really weird place to be in. And by the time I graduated, it was 2021. I was an ICU nurse up until that point for about 9 years. I'd worked all throughout COVID. It was a really traumatic time for a lot of healthcare workers, and I was extremely burnt out. And when I graduated, I realized that I no longer wanted to work in healthcare. I was just like, this is just
Mm.
not what I wanted to do. And at the time, I thought like I was going to work in family medicine. I was going to become a primary care provider. I'd help people manage their health symptoms, and maybe we would talk about nutrition, and I would just do pap smears all day and just, have a nice 9 to 5 job because I wasn't used to having that. But then, having done my training in there, I was just like, man, the healthcare system is just so deeply flawed. And I wasn't proud of the work that I was doing, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. And then a few months later, I started my virtual practice, and I started kind of just seeing people all over the world with chronic health symptoms. And I started marketing on social media, and that's where I kind of was able to reach people, and I shared my story, and a lot of people resonated. And yeah, it's been 3 years. So that's kind of where I am now.
That's amazing. It's just I love hearing people's stories of how they got into this work because there's always a story, right? We've
There's
all
always a
gotten into
story.
this work because of our own issues and being told no, we're fine, or being dismissed, or all of those things that the medical community does. And it subsequently changes our lives and our practices, right? Um I guess I have so many questions, but when you were starting to transition, because I know I'm feeling this in my practice now, right? Like we are so, especially in the functional world, as we were sort of talking offline, right? There's so many, I don't want to say there's so many theories, but there are, right? It's all okay, it's all about root cause. But when you start digging, root causes are in different places until you really learn the medical medium. And now you're like, well, there's really only, the root cause is either, a combination of this, this, and this. But how did you implement that in your practice in the way that, because a lot of it flies in the face of what we have learned, right? In terms of
Yes.
either A, it flies in the face of it and it contradicts it, or it's just there's no medical or there's no scientific research, let's say, to validate it. And we're in the world of science, right? We're all about that. So, how did you wrap your head around that and reconcile that and then start to transition your practice? Was it just from being your own experiment and saying, wow, this is working? Or how else did you kind of, you know, bring that in?
That's a really great question. So for me, like the way my brain works and all throughout school, like if I understand why something happens in the body, that's when I really deeply learn it. And all
Mhm.
throughout school, all throughout, my years of experience, this in the conventional medicine world, we don't really know what causes a lot of things. We don't know what causes hypertension. We don't know what causes endometriosis. We don't know the root cause of a lot of chronic diseases.
Mhm.
And we're amazing in the world of acute illness. Like you come in with a car accident, we're going to save your life because we know exactly what bones are broken. We know exactly where in your liver it's scarred and ruptured or things like that. We know exactly what to do. But when it comes to chronic illness, we don't really know what to do except to put band-aids on it,
Right.
right? And when I had read the medical medium books, um, the root cause was so well explained to me that I was like, this is undeniable. Like
Mhm.
everything makes sense to me. And I think that was something that was very validating for me. And then obviously getting the results, right? Like that was huge. And there's obviously some overlap with medical medium information and functional medicine, about like the toxins, the toxic heavy metals, and low grade infections in the body and things like that. But what little things like, I had struggled with, from the functional medicine world, they call it like candida overgrowth. And I had been on a very low carb diet. I didn't eat fruit for like 3 years. Very, very,
Right.
I ate nothing but like meat and vegetables every
Right.
day,
Right.
and I still didn't get better. You know what I mean? And then I implement medical being for information for 6 months, and then I'm better eating tons of fruit. You know what I mean? So it's just like the proof is in the pudding, you know. And then over the years, I'm meeting all these people with chronic health symptoms, and they're bringing all this alternative and functional medicine, and they're not really moving the needle either. So it just everything just kind of made sense to me at that point. And it is especially when I started my practice, it was really hard for me to really um it was really hard to explain medical medium information because it was always like, I like to see evidence. I love evidence. Like I did, we're trained like everything in medicine, we're in our training is all about evidence-based practice, evidence-based medicine, evidence-based that. And I couldn't really provide the evidence. I could find like correlational studies with medical medium information, but it was never like Epstein-Barr virus causes thyroid disease. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, there's like correlational studies behind it, but there was nothing there. But, what I do now in my practice, I always explain to my clients is, well, I'm going to share with you the conventional medicine perspective, and then I'm going to share with you the medical meaning perspective. And I really think it's important for people to know what the root cause is and what their options are.
Yeah, and that's so true because and I'm very much the same way. If I know why things are happening, I mean, it's exactly, then you can buy into that a little bit more. I do find explaining the medic when you start saying, medical medium, and then you start explaining who he is, people start looking you, halfway sideways. Like, so I do less of that now. I'm like, you know what? I've got a protocol I want you to start, and here's what I want you to do. And I always reference, I say it's from this protocol, right? I'm very
Yeah,
careful to reference his work. Um, but I feel like some of it and again, depending upon the person, right, who you're talking to, but, like,
right.
you sort of bring that in a very gentle way, and then, then it's like, "Okay, go read the book, and, well, yes, this is
Yeah,
really what he says," and,
yeah.
so I feel like it does take stages to start
Definitely. But
introducing.
I will say, like, I think when people come to medical media information, they're usually at rock bottom. So
Right,
usually when my clients come to me, they are so desperate. They're like, I will do anything.
right.
And, I have clients that are physicians and nurses and physical therapists and like a lot of healthcare workers. So it's really refreshing to see that they are open to it.
Mhm.
But it's because and then they didn't get there, because like they resonated with the information. They got there because nothing else worked,
Right.
and that's what happened with me too. You know what I mean? It took me really to get to rock bottom, to be open to the information. And I kick myself sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have healed so much faster. I would have had my best 20s if I had, had this information sooner. But I think that was just my journey,
Right.
and my life is so much better now, and I'm so much happier.
Well, I say, right, it comes to us when we're ready. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When you started implementing, like what was the process? Because I know it has to be, I know at least for me, right? It's definitely been this process of, okay, I've done this and this, and now I'm going to bring in that. And we're at two different vantage points, right? I, thank goodness, I'm not dealing with, I'm more dabbling in it just to, like I've said, I've had a thyroid thing I'm trying to get rid of. I've got some little things here and there, but overtly nothing major, thank goodness, right? I'm dabbling in a different way, perhaps, but
Yeah.
you came in, you were really, really desperate. Can you talk a little bit about what you started with and kind of what you brought in? Because I think a lot of our listeners are playing with this and they're not sure, even though we're giving them the guidance of, okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
here's the supplements and so forth and so on. And, and it's, I'm in this program with you that you're doing, this Ask the Docs program, which is a mentorship program for practitioners in this space. And, we were going through a case study and you were going through the last one and it was like, well, do, 10 drops of this twice a day. And I remember reaching out to Sherry and going, how do you know how many drops to do? I'm. only at two. And so obviously every person is different, but how did you start with the implementation? And even in your practice, obviously everyone's individual, but can you give us a general sense of like, how do you know when to bring someone up in the level of their doses? How do you know, when to bring certain things in? And obviously depending upon certain conditions, but like, so start with how you implement it and kind of when you're looking at someone, what is the determinant for, raising the or increasing the dosages and so forth?
Sure, that's a great question. So for me personally, when I had found medical medium, I was already gluten dairy free. So for me, like remove eggs, like wasn't that big of a deal. I was like, whatever. And then the fact that I could eat like unlimited fruit for me at that time, like I was like, sign me up because I'd been restricting sugar because I thought sugar was bad at that time. So I first started with celery juice, and then I started implementing more fruit into my diet. So I started bringing in smoothies and things like that. And it was definitely an easier transition for me because I was already used to like meal prepping for myself and like not eating at restaurants, and I wasn't getting DoorDash at the time. I was already like in that flow, so I think my transition was much easier. And eventually I started bringing in like the cleanses, like the 369 cleanses and things like that. But when I'm working one-on-one with my clients, it's really about reading the room and seeing how aggressive they want to be. And obviously, if they're really sick, I really want to transition them a little bit more slowly, making sure they tolerate everything. Because as you know, like, the more healing foods we bring in, we're going to uproot poisons, we're going to start killing pathogens in the body, and that can make us really uncomfortable. And also, I want the protocol to be achievable for those people, right? I'm not going to put them on, like, if this is a guy who eats like 3 steaks a day and eats McDonald's, like we're not doing a really aggressive protocol at the beginning. We really want to ease into it. So so yeah, I think it's always very individualized. Like, when I'm working one-on-one with my clients, we sit there and do meal plans together. I'm like, okay, like how do you feel about doing this and this for breakfast? How do you feel about doing this in the like, oh no, I won't do that, or I can't give up meat, or what if I just do some cheese in my salad? You know what I mean? So we really try to work together to find what works for them. And then as far as, making the protocol more aggressive, it really comes down to like the sicker and more symptomatic you are, the more aggressive you have to be. And I think that's what's really, really frustrating um, about this is like, as you know, like the more sick you are, the harder you have to work.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I feel like, if someone, is very symptomatic with viral symptoms, that to me means that I need to put them on a more aggressive antiviral protocol. So I'm going to up their antiviral herbs and supplements and things like that. Or if someone, I don't know, I feel like maybe they haven't really moved the needle quite yet, I'm going to put them on a cleanse because cleansing, you'll get more out in 9 days of cleansing than you will in like 6 months of just eating clean. You know what I mean? So there's definitely ways that we can, it's kind of an art to implementing the information is what I've really learned over the last few years. But yeah, that's kind of how I'm able to gauge like how much more aggressive we need to be. And then, with herbs and supplements, the nice thing about, it's really interesting because from the world that we come from in conventional medicine, it's always like we want to use the least amount of a medication possible to achieve results, right? Like we want to start, you want a lower dose of a antihypertensive medication. And then once we achieve that normal optimal range, then we're going to stop there. We're not going to keep going up on the
Right.
medication. And I think it's really interesting coming from this perspective where the more you take, the more therapeutic it is. So I have so many clients that don't want to take a lot, like, oh, I just want to do a little bit here and there. I'm like, well, if you took more, you kill more pathogens, your immune system will be stronger and you'll heal faster. So, yeah, so sometimes more is better
Right.
when it comes to healing those things.
Right. And I guess, like you said, you have to read the room. We've had some interesting um, results with, we were working with a woman who is diabetic, and we, told her, okay, increase your fruit, right? And she looked at us like sideways. What do you mean increase my fruit, right? And what do you mean throw in potatoes and what, And she spoke to one of our coaches the other day, and she's like, "I cannot believe how much energy I have, how good I'm feeling. My blood sugar
Wow.
hasn't is stable." Right? All of these amazing things that she's having as a result of shifting her diet. Um, and I think getting the buy-in from people sometimes is that is the hardest part. Just getting them to really trust that what you're saying is going to put them in the right direction, because I think we
Yeah.
just hear so much noise from outside, from everywhere from outside. So, is that what you're saying to your clients too? Like, trust me, I got you.
Oh, yeah, it's hard because usually by the people that time people have come to me, they're like they've been really burned. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
they've like already spent thousands of dollars on all these different doctors or practitioners, and I think a lot of people, especially if they're new to medical meeting, they're probably really hesitant. Um, and it's really hard to like, what a great story about your diabetic client. Like that's amazing. The fact that they were able to see results and feel results
Right.
and see the numbers, like that's just amazing. But unfortunately, not everyone like, can heal that quickly or have their symptoms go away that quickly. And those are the times where I really want people like to trust the process. And I think when people understand what's happening in their bodies and like what the cause is, what they need to do, I think that's really going to help. That really helps to keep people on track,
Right.
right? Like, because it's just like, it's like we know the underlying cause is Epstein-Barr virus, shingles, HHV6, streptococcus overgrowth, things like that, and then poisons, toxins, toxic heavy metals, things like that. So, and sometimes healing can take a long time, and healing can really kind of happen under the surface.
Mhm.
And then it'll take a while to really like see the results and feel the results. So I think in those people, I'm like, you just have to trust the process. You have to have faith, prayer, whatever you need to do to get through this. But I tell my clients, like, I just feel so strongly and I believe so much in your healing that I just really think you need to stay on course. And I also have to remind them, like, you've already tried conventional medicine, functional medicine, alternative medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda. Like, you've tried all those things and they didn't work. And it just takes time. But at least with medical medium information, you're addressing the root cause, which is
Right.
really key.
Absolutely, absolutely. So going back to, right, the toxins, and he talks so much about the exposures and the toxins and the heavy metals.
Hmm.
So, in doing this, and I know every day we're always exposed to other things. We're never in a purely clean body, right?
Yeah.
But is there a time where you can say to someone, how do we know? And maybe there is no right answer to this or answer at all to this, but like, how do we know if we are really moving the dial on getting rid of those, accumulated toxins that are causing symptoms? Is it we're going to see less of the symptom? Is it, so let's take someone like myself. Okay. Perfect example. I I had cancer 20 years ago, went through chemotherapy, went through radiation. I think I ate tuna fish every day as a girl in high school.
Hmm.
Right. Like, and so, and whatever other exposure subsequent, whether it's, the radiation that I had from my PET scans that I had, the CAT scans, all that kind of stuff. And then just day to day. Right. So, here I am, 6 months down the road or 5, 6 months down the road doing my heavy metal detox smoothie, doing my celery, doing all of these things. But I came into this feeling pretty good, right? And,
Yeah.
and I had
Yeah.
a few little things, some things, but nothing that I would say. It was just more of me trying to find something like, okay, once in a while I'd have a skipped heartbeat. Once in a while my
Right.
plantar fasciitis would and flare up. Okay, yeah, I got this thyroid nodule I got to get rid of, right? Um, but by and large, I feel pretty good. So,
Yeah.
but I am 100% convinced I am definitely toxic. So,
Yes.
again, been doing all of these things, doing my heavy metal detox. I was just on a plane the other day. Yesterday, did my, radiation shot, whatever. Um, so how would I know, let's say, that I'm at a place where maybe I'm not as, that I don't have, not that I don't have to be, because I do this because I know the purpose of it. But like, how do I know, what
Yeah.
and not that you can answer that 100%, but I think people would want to know. And I've gotten this question, like, how do you know when you're cleanish?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our body tries really hard to protect us from poisons. It buries it in our organs and our fat cells and our tissues and things like that. And generally, when people become really symptomatic, is whenever their toxic burden, that bucket is just full. It's just like overflowing with poisons, and then we develop symptoms. So I think for you, you're fortunate, and thank God you're in a really good place where like your toxic burden, it's you got a little wiggle room, right? So and right now you're doing all the active things to get rid of that, that the contents in the bucket so that you don't develop symptoms in the future. But I do think it's important to note that a lot of these poisons and toxins do create certain symptoms, and they are food for pathogens. So, for example, like eczema, psoriasis, those are copper, mercury, things like that. Dementia, Alzheimer's, aluminum, mercury in the brain. Depression, anxiety, aluminum, mercury, and toxic heavy metals in the brain. So, and, those are signs that you do have those poisons in your system. And then also another sign of being really toxic, obviously skin condition,
Right.
but thick blood, right? If you have poor circulation, if you have thick, dirty blood, dark circles, high blood pressure, things like that, that's a sign that you are incredibly toxic. Or if you can't tolerate fatty foods, right? A lot of people who have a really overburdened, sluggish, toxic liver can't digest fatty foods because their livers are so toxic, they can't produce bile, and then they get really uncomfortable whenever they eat fatty foods. And then that reflects in like gallbladder disease and gallstones and things like that. So there's always signs that there's toxicity in the body. But yeah, I think it's just important to remember, like, even the air we breathe, like currently the air that you and I are breathing, that is full of poison.
Right.
But we just have to try to get them out faster than they're coming in. And of course, making sure we're peeing and flushing and pooping every day and things like that. That's all really, really important.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. So, one of the things, he talks about it a little bit. I think this is a really important point in terms of the landscape of total healing, right? I mean, a lot of the work
Mhm.
that we do when we're talking about, let's say, the pillars of health, right? When in the work that I'm doing with clients, we're looking at nutrition, we're looking at movement, and we're looking at sleep and stress, environment, right? Mental, emotional, and all of that. And I think that mental, emotional, spiritual component is so important. I mean, we know he does talk about things that trigger that immune system and that viral load, let's say, right? Things like betrayal and heartbreak and death and loss and all of that kind of thing. But I also think that there is this, and obviously we know there is a huge mental component to viral load, right? When you're talking about Epstein-Barr, when it's gone to stage 4, and there's this whole viral load in the brain. But isn't there also, and I don't know how much of this you bring into your work, but that spiritual connection, being connected to source, light, whatever you want to call it, Do you bring that into your work, whether it's through medical medium or otherwise? Like, how do you implement? Because I think the mental, emotional piece of illness is not addressed enough, and people are not given tools to help support them in that, right? And
Yeah.
especially you want to talk about conventional medicine, where you're really just demonized, or just what's the word I'm looking for? Like ignored, right? It's just
Yes.
completely ignored, and you're made to almost feel foolish, like that you think about that. So,
Yes.
how do you bring that into your practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't grow up religious, and prayer and things like that really just were really foreign to me. And I wasn't the most like, I guess, spiritual in that sense. But I think getting sick, um, I think when you're so desperate, it definitely triggers some spirituality in you. And when I found medical medium information, he does talk a lot about spirituality and meditation and things like that. And he specifically talks about angels and praying to the angels, how there's, all these wonderful angels that love us and want to help us. And there's specific ones that we can ask for help with a certain ailment, whether it's heartbreak, whether it's um, pregnancy, whether, whatever it is. There's so many different angels that we can seek support from. And interestingly, I had found medical medium in 2018, but I didn't really get into that kind of prayer, meditation, angelic realm until maybe like 2 years ago. So again, it was like a really foreign thing to me. I think at the time I was just so focused on feeling my physical health that I didn't really address my mental and emotional health. And so, having learned the benefits of really addressing my mental and spiritual health, I definitely do bring that a lot with my clients. And, during my initial consultations, I always ask my clients, like, what are they doing for their mental health? What makes them happy? What are they looking forward to doing whenever they get better? Because I think it's really important. Um, and again, I just kind of read the room. Like if I'll ask you like, oh, like what are you doing for your mental health? Like, oh, are you into meditation? Can I recommend some meditations for you? Are you religious? Oh, you believe in God. Okay. Do you believe in angels? Like, how do you feel about praying to angels and asking for help? So it's a lot of like reading the room and seeing what people are open to. And you definitely don't want to scare people away because that's
Right.
obviously can feel really woo woo. Um, but yeah, I think, we're all just so individual. We're all in different stages and we're, in various, degrees of our path and things like that. So, yeah, but I do think all of those things are incredibly important. I do think being out in nature is just one of the most like healing things we can do. Um, and for your listeners, I don't think a lot of people know about this course, but it's a free medical medium course. It's on the website and it's called The Healing Path.
Mm.
And obviously in the medical medium books, most of like all like 9 of them, it's all it's very scientific and it's all about the food and the herbs and the supplements. But in that healing course, the healing path, he also discusses the importance of sunshine and prayer and meditation and nature and kind of those additional aspects to healing. And I think it's a very underutilized course. So that can be an option as well for those people who are interested.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely make sure. I didn't know about that either. So,
Mhm.
I'm learning all this too as we go through it, and implementing. And I mean, I'm a quick study, so I do it
Yeah.
quickly, but yeah, I do think that people sometimes, especially when they've been so oh, they've just they're at rock bottom, they're sort of feeling hopeless, and they can't see or believe in their own healing. I think
Mhm.
our belief systems are so important in our journey, right? If you have been told, especially when you've been told, like you, right, when you started rattling off all these diagnoses that you had, people start to become defined by their diagnoses. And I think taking that away and kind of making sure that they're not living based on that diagnosis, that they can see a better way, that they can see healing. I always talk to my clients, and part of the work is, what is your vision for your health? And I think they want to get healthy, but they have to believe that they can get healthy.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
that there's such a disconnect there that these people are just doing these things, yet they still don't believe that there is a better way. I mean, did you find yourself in that? Because, you said, here I am in my 20s and I'm so dismayed that I am feeling this way. Did you, what was your going through your mental,
Mhm.
what was your mental state about that?
That's a great question. So I'm a pretty happy, optimistic person. So I always had this like faith and like fire that I just like knew that I could get better. I just didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And I think for me, I just wasn't willing to accept that as my life. And I didn't, I think one of the blessings, and I don't know why I didn't, but I never identified with my diseases. I never would introduce myself like, hi, I'm Satara, I have autoimmune disease. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
I never identified as someone with illness, you know what I mean? So I think that really, really helped move me forward. And, I think the biggest thing, I was a trauma intensive care unit nurse for about 9 years. And every day I would go to work and see people recover from the unimaginable, spinal cord injury patients walking again. People who shouldn't have survived. I literally got to see miracles every day. And when I'd see them, I'm like, okay, that guy like broke every bone in his body. He has a traumatic brain injury. He has tubes in every hole in his body. And 6 months later, 12 months later, he's walking, talking again, going back to school, skateboarding again. And I think having seen the incredible resilience of the human body and the human spirit on a daily basis, that was gold for me. I was like, if that guy can recover from that, I can recover from my SIBO, I can recover from my fatigue, I can recover from X, Y, and Z. And obviously not everyone gets to see that on a daily basis, but I
Right.
think that was a little bit of a blessing for me to see that every day. So yeah, I just feel really strongly in the power of the human body. And maybe when it comes to chronic illness, we see less of that progress. But I think it's very, very possible. And I think also, on the medical medium Instagram page, he's always posting people's healing stories and their progress. And that to me is just like, oh my gosh, like I cannot wait until my healing story happens for me, because those are really inspirational as well. Did I definitely have moments where I didn't think I would ever get better? Absolutely. Did I have like moments of weakness, or not even weakness, just moments where I just felt like, I'm not sure if this is going to work out for me. Maybe it worked out for those people, but maybe it's not going to work out for me. But then, a few weeks later, a few months later, like these symptoms are just not existing in my body anymore. So I'm like, okay, this is just further motivation for me to keep going on this path.
Well, and I'm glad that you said, that it was I think, in terms of the timeline, right? So people come in to us all the time and they, expect like in 3 months they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to be perfect."
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I remember
Right.
thinking when I started medical medium, I was like, I'm going to give it 3 months and I'm going to be so much better. And that obviously was not the case for me.
Right. Well, and I think it's again, I gave you a situation, a story about a woman who is seeing changes. Now she's got a long way
Yeah.
to go. She's got a lot of other things going on. I mean,
Yeah.
grateful for the progress that she's made and
Yeah.
so happy that she's seeing that because it gives her the impetus to keep going and she
Yeah.
knows she's in the right going in the right path. So where are you now in your healing journey? Are you healed? Are you in, I don't know, do we call it remission? Where are
Yeah.
you now with all of this?
That's a great question. So, I would say, I mean, I don't really have symptoms. Like, I don't have pot symptoms. I don't have autoimmune symptoms. I don't feel inflamed. My lab work is great. Um, I think knowing medical medium information, I still know that I have some, but just kind of like you have other things brewing in you. So I have a little, I have like a little bit of eczema that I know that I need to like work on my liver and get rid of metals. And I could occasionally get acne, so I know I have a little bit of strep in my system and things like that. But yeah, overall, I feel amazing. I'm thankfully, thank God, in very good health.
Good. Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
Well, that's great. That's great.
thank you.
So yeah, I mean, like, what else? Is there anything else that you would want to share with our audience that you would want them to know in this work? Again, being that this is their entree into this, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot where I can think, people come in. I was actually just thinking about before you say that, who are like, they're so tied to, oh no, I have SIBO, I have gut
yeah,
stuff, I have, and just explaining to them like, okay, we got to peel away the layers and let's start here and we'll get there. I have someone that I'm working with and, she believes in this. She's doing all the stuff. She's doing the celery juice and the herbal stuff and the detox. I mean, she's definitely been doing it. Yet whenever a symptom comes up, she's like very much wanting to throw a supplement. And I'm like,
Yes.
no. You can't just heal. You have a symptom and think a supplement is going to take away the symptom. Like, we've got to go through this whole process here,
Yes.
and getting
Yeah.
out of that model of, a pill for every ill. Right.
Yes.
So I was just,
Yeah.
that when
No, that's a great point because yeah, I mean, healing is really, really messy. Like you'll have some months where you feel great, then you'll have a dip and you won't feel so great. And a lot of it is trusting the process. But I think just really like, if conventional medicine had all the answers, then no one would be sick. Like we'd all be healthy. You know what I mean? But that's clearly not the case. The population just continues to get sicker and sicker and sicker. So we really need to look at other things that are promoting illness in the body. And once you learn what the root causes are, you can actually go after it. So I think just really keep an open mind. And we're always taught as children, like eat your fruits and vegetables that will make you healthy and strong. And then as we get older, life gets a little bit more complicated, and there's all these different theories out there about like, oh, you need to be on a carnivore diet. You can only eat like butter and meat. And then we have these people like, oh, potatoes are bad. You know what I mean? It's just like we really need to get back to simplicity and nature. And the most healing foods on the planet are fruits and vegetables. So if you're dealing with a chronic health symptom, bring in a lot of those healing foods. And specific with medical me information, there really is the details really do matter. Obviously, before I found medical me information, I was eating tons of produce and eating really clean things, and I wasn't doing seed oils and things like that, but I was still sick. So I think and obviously there are a lot of people who can just heal with that alone. They can just get rid of processed foods and exercise and drink more water, and they feel a lot better. And then there's like people like me who the details really do matter. And I really had to be far more aggressive in my protocol and take, very high quality supplements and things like that to really see changes in my body.
Right.
So I think just really keep an open mind and go back to simplicity, bring in an abundance of healing foods into your life. And if you really aren't, like, if you're noticing symptoms aren't really budging, then look into medical meaning information. I've worked in healthcare for over 12 years, and I've never seen more healing, more progress in my life than with this information. Like this information is gold, and we are so lucky to have it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I met Sherry, and I think one of the first, when we started talking about this, I think one of the first things I had said to her is, I've been in functional medicine over 20 years, and look, we've done great work. We've healed a lot of people, but you do have people who come back who still have some symptoms, or they're not 100% healed or whatever it may be. But I had finished an immune course that I was doing. I had finished some other work that I was doing, advanced, certificate stuff. And I remember at the end of it saying, I feel like I'm still missing something. Something is missing. Something is not, And then I met Sherry and we started talking, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like this is sort of the missing piece that I've been asking, right? I've been asking the universe, like, show me what I'm missing. Literally,
Yeah.
I would be meditating. I'm like, just show me what I'm missing. I'd say it out loud, right?
Yeah.
And I think I learned to say it out loud when Anthony said, you got to talk to the angels out loud, right?
Yeah.
But when so it really resonated on a level that I couldn't even explain, because clearly there was no science behind it. But as I started reading, and I literally, I got every book within a week. I was
Yeah.
sitting with stacks. I was on my couch. I'd have 4 of them open. I'd take a screenshot for Sherry. Like, where do I even start? Right? How do I go through this? And, just poured my way through it so that I could start to make sense of it in my brain. And even though there's not, let's say, clear, scientific data, if you will, it made sense from the understanding that I have of nutritional biochemistry, from the understanding that I have of physiology. You just go back to some of this and it's like, oh, yeah, I never thought of it like that. The whole explanation with how the liver uses glucose, why we need sugar, why having too much fat, and even the protein, because there's fat in the protein, right? Having too much of that overburdens the liver. And then if you go back to understanding liver metabolism and nutritional biochemistry of the liver, you're like, duh,
It makes sense. Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like, I remember like learning about fatty liver, like, oh, it's because people are drinking too much Coca-Cola. And I'm like, no, it's because they're eating too much fat. Like it's
Right.
fatty liver, but then we complicate things, you know what I mean? So, oh, and one thing I really appreciate about you, Meryl, is like how open-minded you are. And I just feel like to be like into your career with 20 years of knowledge, like you're still constantly trying to learn and you're not the nice thing about you is like you're not set in your ways. Like
Right.
you don't think you know it all. None of us know it all. And I think it's just really amazing to have someone like you in this world who's just like open to just learning and like you changing and shifting perspectives. And I think that's really, really special. So I just want to throw that out there that I really,
Wow.
really appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's, how do you call yourself an expert unless you are willing to do that? Right?
Yes.
You are willing to be open-minded. I mean, and that's what science is about. Science is not
Mhm.
about digging your heels in and going, my theory is the best. I mean, they're theories,
Yeah.
right? They're theories. They're
Yeah.
not
And
proved.
things always change. There's always evidence coming up that changes, and there's a medication that we recommended for 20 years, and then we decide that that's not the best one anymore, and that is a different one. You know what I mean? So things are always changing.
Right. And I think if you're really going to serve people in the best way possible, you have to be open to that as a practitioner,
Yes.
right? As a
Yes.
practitioner, how am I doing you a service if I am not willing to look at what else might be out there that can help you heal? And that's
Yes.
really the ultimate, that is my goal in this is what can I keep? How can I? And what can I keep learning that is going to move the needle for someone, right? I mean, we were just talking to someone today who was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer,
Mm.
and this girl's 29 years old.
Oh.
And I will tell you, her energy and her light and her spirit was phenomenal. And,
Mm.
we started talking about implementing a lot of this work and she was all in, right? Again, someone who's at rock
Yeah.
bottom who is willing to do it. And wow, how fortunate am I that I can be sort of the
The vessel to help her.
Exactly, right,
Yeah.
vessel to
Yeah.
help her, so that made me, feel really good, and yeah, and I think I'm a lifelong learner. For me, it's like
Yes.
more I can understand about the human body is just fascinating, right? I think the immune system
Incredible.
is fascinating, and so, and we don't know everything about it, right? We know this much about it, so,
Yes.
um,
Yeah. The more
yeah.
you learn, the more you realize you don't know a lot.
The more you learn, the less you know, right?
Yes.
So, but I appreciate this conversation and your, willingness to share all of this great knowledge that you have. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Absolutely. All right. So yes, another great conversation about medical medium information. We're going to keep it coming because this stuff is the real deal. It works. So check out Dr. Sitar's Instagram.
Yeah, it's dr.setare.np, dr.setare.np. I also have a website, healwithsetare.com. And yeah.
Awesome. So we'll have all that in the show notes anyway, so you can always look there. But thank you again, Sitar, for this great conversation.
Yeah,
I look
thank you so much for having me.
I look forward to more conversations with you, and of course, gaining all that great information from the Ask the Docs program that you're doing. So thank you for that work too.
Yeah, yeah, we love it. Thank you.
Yes. All right, everybody. So, with that, this brings us to the end of another amazing podcast. And this is your Rebel Nutritionist signing off. Make it a great day.